Tonals. The idea of just like aggressively disco dancing at someone is probably like top 5 favorite things I've had to do in my life. Hi, I'm Oscar Isaac, and I'm going to painfully rewatch some scenes from my illustrious career on VHS. As a stone lay cold as a stone. Right, so this is from Inside Llewyn Davis when I'm singing this song Queen Jane. I've traveled all the way to Chicago to kind of have this one shot at, getting the career going. I mean, F. Murray Abraham, like. Imagine opening up your heart to this face and waiting for the judgment to come down. And the fact that he's also Salieri, in this musical moment, it was just incredible. Llewyn Davis was my first leading role. I knew about it. I was playing a lot of music at the time. And I learned as much of Dave Van Ronk's catalog as I could once I knew that that's who was kind of loosely based on. It was one video I sent in playing a song and then one audition for the Coens. And really, I'd say less fighting, more just pleading with the universe for this to happen, that I wanted it so badly and I needed it. And, the fact that things lined up where I was granted the opportunity to do it is still kind of hard to believe. I mean, for me, there's life before Llewyn Davis and right, life after Llewyn Davis. It was a welcome home in a way, to be able to have Joel and Ethan be those figures in my life that kind of welcomed me into what it felt like to have that responsibility to lead this film, to get immersed in folk music of the time, to become really close to T-Bone Burnett, who did the music, and the fact that it was something that was so intimate and personal to them and prickly. It's a very provocative movie, and it's not easily liked, just like the main character. It tells a very specific story in a very specific way. But like to align with something like that, it's not asking to be loved, it just is the thing that it is. Really honored too, that I could contribute to that.
I don't see a lot of money here.
It's interesting because, when we were preparing for this is kind of loosely based on Dave Van Ronk. And so we used a lot of Dave Van Ronk's music. But this one song, whatever Llewyn plays in this moment, was not chosen by the Coens when we started. And so I remember sending a lot of songs to them and thinking, like, how about this one? A lot of them were like kind of sexy blues songs that Dave would sing, and like really intense ones. And they kept going, nah. And I'm like, I don't think it's blues. I think it's like kind of a cornier white guy song. I was like, what do you mean? Like just something that's like a little bit like really folky. And they never really explained why that was it. And then they landed on this Queen Jane song, which was like about a medieval C-section. And what's amazing about the Coens is that they don't really over-explain anything. It's almost too square to talk too much directly about what it is. And I learned it, and I think it's a beautiful song. And I realize now how much it is connected to all the strands of what's happening in his life. And the whole point of the song is that he plays just a tragically uncommercial song in this moment, but it's one that feels the truest to him. And that's kind of his cross to bear, is that he can't move outside of his small bandwidth of what authenticity means, even if it means kind of tanking his career. So that's it.
You're okay. You're not green.
But I don't have what, say, Troy Nelson has.
You know Troy? A good kid. He's a good kid. Yeah. He connects with people.
They're just so mischievous, the Coens. I remember whenever, you can see it right there on the face, like whenever I would think of something as funny in the movie, like a scene, it just really wouldn't work. And when I was at my most heartbroken and just weighed down by tragedy, they would find it the funniest. They would just start laughing. And so I think, it's not that they're sadists, although maybe a little bit. I call this, what is it, a screwball tragedy. That they find the sad, beautiful absurdity in our existence and find a way to portray it with a lot of humor and compassion and edge.
Look, I'm putting together a trio, 2 guys and a girl singer. You're no front guy, but if you can cut that down to a goatee, stay out of the sun, we might see how your voice works with the other two. You comfortable with harmonies?
No. The whole thing started with a week of all of us at this place, Avatar Studios in New York, and recording all of the music with Marcus Mumford and Justin Timberlake, and Adam Driver was in there, and the Punch Brothers, and just like an incredible litany of amazing musicians. That was our foundation. And Joel and Ethan would just be lying around on the couches listening. T-Bone Burnett would be going around, burning Palo Santo. And that was our immersive introduction into this thing. So you could just trust the authenticity of what we were doing. And it wasn't even a question of likable or not likable. It's just, this is this person's journey. And, whether you decide to go with them or not, that's on you.
Up ahead, you see it? I got us dead center. It's a clean shot.
Okay, got it.
Did you see that?
It was this beautiful red herring. I think he did something similar in Star Trek 2, where you feel like this heroic character, classic kind of heroic character is going to be your lead character. And then he's gone, and it's the one that you didn't expect, which is Finn, which is the stormtrooper, the least likely that you start to follow. So yeah, that's what it was, and it's fun. I mean, the energy. Once Poe was going to survive much longer, they did want me to read with Finn and with Daisy because they didn't know where it was going to go, so they wanted to see what that was like. Immediately with John Boyega, we just had a chemistry together, and we were already having a lot of fun. We did this scene, I believe, in the audition, and then we did the scene when we're in the actual TIE fighter, and the two ethnics in the film, at least like the two lead ethnics, we just like kind of clung to each other, and we're excited for each other, and I think you feel that kind of love between these two characters.
Hey, what's your name? FN2187. F what? That's the only name they ever gave me. Well, I ain't using it. FN, huh? Finn, I'm gonna call you Finn, is that all right? Finn, yeah, Finn, I like that. I'm Poe Dameron. Good to meet you, Poe. Good to meet you too, Finn.
The TIE fighter is much more comfortable to fly than the X-Wing. Just a little tidbit. There's a little more space. The X-Wing is a little bit more, you're a little tighter. Oftentimes you got the helmet on. It's, you got a little joystick. This one's got, these kind of things that you're moving around on the side, and I think the way that they're shot generally is just they're just a little more open. The X-Wing was hard on the first one in particular because we shot it outside, and it would just get ridiculously hot.
No droid can be that important. This one is. We gotta get as far away from the First Order as we can. Go back to Jakku, we die. That droid has a map that leads straight to Luke Skywalker. Oh, you gotta be kidding me!
There was a lot of pride in being, in those early days, like one of the few Latinos in space. I loved getting to know JJ as well, and especially in this one, there was just the air of possibility and not knowing what this thing was, and feeling like this was the first one in so many years to come back to. Getting to meet the original cast, it was incredibly exciting to be asked to come on board of this thing.
To the office. I called a car.
The office is still closed.
Well, I got a key.
Will you please just listen for a second?
What?
This is it's just surreal. It's delusional.
Yeah, I know.
Then I don't accept it. We're gonna sit here and we're gonna talk as long as it takes, okay?
We talked last night.
No, we yelled at each other for an hour. That's not the same thing. We were shooting during COVID as well, so it was also that made it even more alien, and it was a really pressurized situation. Guy Levy and Amy Herzog with him wrote this really surgical precision of pain in a marriage and in a dissolution of a marriage. And Jessica and I, knowing each other for so long and, trusting each other to go down this dark rabbit hole of pain, it was a real excavation that was painful. And I think it produced some really compelling work.
It's not gonna do any good. I mean,
It's not gonna do anything. What is this? What is this thing where we can't talk to each other, Mira? I want to talk to you,
No,
and you
you
don't want to talk to me. What kind
You
of
wanna keep
cruelty
me
is
here at
that?
all
I want to
costs.
talk to you. I want to. I want to sit here till there's smoke coming out of our ears, and we've gone through all of the angles and figured out where we went wrong and how we can fix it. Yeah, you know, it is important to find ways, healthy ways of kind of letting that be its thing and move on. I know I was watching a lot of Succession at the time. I hadn't seen it, so I'd go into the room and watch a lot of that, eat a lot of potato chips. Those were kind of the two things I would do to try to relax.
I'm not attracted to you anymore. How do you fix that?
Pain of being left behind, that kind of confusion. Hagai was really great because this character was quite different from me and had a different upbringing, and the idea that he had been Orthodox and he had a very kind of strict idea of right and wrong, you know, and that he was trying to approach this in not such a, you know, in the kind of sublimating himself in this situation. In the hopes that would kind of make her come back or at least just talk to him. I think that the pain of that and the confusion of this. Also, shooting in this house, you know, it was its own character. We built this house and it became a character in itself. You know, sometimes it was this happy place and often it was just this place of trauma. It's very evocative of that time. I haven't seen it since, so it's quite strong.
Jonathan, please let me go, please. Please.
It's effective. It's effective. Yeah, you know, I get, you know, it's the idea that Jonathan's like, maybe if she feels this will convince her to stay, you know, and then that kind of almost childlike, like clinging to mom's leg. Go ahead, dance with her. Dance with her. No? You don't like dancing? She does. Come on, buddy. After a long day of Turing tests, you gotta unwind.
What were you doing with Ava?
What?
You tore up her picture.
I'm gonna tear up the fucking dance floor, dude. Check it out. This is a very good exchange. Talking about just like Alex's sense of humor, just the tear up the fucking dance floor. I remember before I agreed to do the film, I was looking at it, and I my best friend growing up, he's like a musician as well, and he's a physicist, and I was like, take a look at this, and then it was this scene when he read it, he's like, I can really picture you saying, I'm going to tear up the fucking dance floor. It's like, it sounds like a really dickish thing that you would say. I was like, yeah, you're right. I actually rehearsed a lot to figure out how to do this dance. Both of us did, me and Sonoya, who's just so great in the movie. This was one of those things where it was just such a random spike in the middle of the film. It's hard to understand why it's just so perfect, even because it's just so opposite of how the rest of it goes. But you think, we're talking to Alex Garland, and it's like, if this guy's all by himself, he's got no friends, he's got these robots, you know, okay, we have an idea of what he does with these robots, but at a certain point, what else is there? You know, what would he do if he wanted to like have fun? And we thought this idea that he like programmed the robot or this particular robot to be able to do this dance and what that felt like. He's also, the thing that was so fun about this character and what Alex and I worked on very hard was looking at this kind of multi-dimensional cube from every angle and understanding at every given moment he is intending something. Nothing is happenstance.
Everybody's busy. Can't wait for the night to begin.
It's all a performance for Donald's character, Caleb, to get a particular result at the end of it. It's his particular type of test that he's doing. And so him performing this horrible creator is very much part of this thing. Him performing someone that's messy and sloppy and drunk is very necessary for Caleb to think that he can create a diversion and an escape. And so that's kind of what the idea of a scene like this is. Loneliness is an interesting thing, you know? And I'm drawn to lonely characters. He's alone and he's by himself and he kind of sees the end of humanity. And these guys, a lot of them have this feeling. I mean, what's amazing about this film is how old it was and how prescient it was, how prophetic it is about so many things. You know, I mean, I've met a lot of these guys since then that are on the forefront of these things, and it is a strange feeling to feel like that you are on the precipice of the singularity, and there's nothing humanity can do about it, and what to do with that, and how one behaves with those things. It's a fascinating character. You know, I looked at geniuses, dark geniuses that inspired me. Bobby Fischer was one, you know, that I read his book, and he really spiraled out. And just kind of seeing some of these things, and also his workout regimen, and that was something that inspired this. Kubrick, I actually listened to a lot of his recordings and modeled my voice a bit after his, and they even got the glasses that looked like his, and a few other people that helped influence it. But the truth is that the script was so tight and the character was so clear in the writing, and it was really funny. You know, in fact, you know, it's something people don't really know is he's an incredibly funny guy. I mean, he's dark, you know, and cerebral, but he's got such a wicked sense of humor. And I think this is one of his, you know, movies, maybe the only one where you really see that expressed in this character, and particularly in this scene. Donald's one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. The idea of just like aggressively disco dancing at someone is probably like top 5 favorite things I've had to do in my life. By the way, the scene was maybe 2 minutes longer. Like the whole dance sequence, it used to end with me like spinning and spinning and spinning around and falling onto this glass table and shattering it. But I think his hard cut to me just smacking myself in the face was like a nice way to end it. Well, this is an interesting tidbit. When he first talked to me, he said, I don't know if I want you to play Leto or if I want you to play Gurney, which Josh Brolin ended up playing Gurney. And I was like, okay. And the same friend, my buddy, Bruce, who said, you know, tear up the fucking dance floor, I can imagine you doing that. He's a huge Dune head, and he's read all the books, and, you know, was just like well-versed. I asked him, I said, what do you think? He's like, I think you're Leto, man. I mean, Gurney's cool, but he's like, I think it's just, you know, Leto's kind of like your dad, and Gurney's like my dad. I was like, all right. And so, yeah, I had kind of thought about the two of them, and then like a week later, then he's like, no, you're Leto. I've thought about it, and you're definitely Leto. Gurney's not available anymore. You're Leto. I was like, all right. And we worked a lot. I read the book. I looked at things that I wanted to bring in. We talked with Eric Roth, who did some work on this scene in particular. We did a few passes to this scene to just try to get to something interesting and, you know, archetypal as well, something that was succinct but really gave you a sense, because, you know, there's not a lot of time particularly between Leto and Tim Chalamet's character, between Paul Atreides. So the scene required it to fulfill a lot of storytelling tasks and character development tasks.
I've studied the Fremen language. I'd be an asset.
Out of the question. They'll travel in a few weeks to Arrakis like the rest of us.
I've been training my whole life. What is the point if I'm not allowed to face some
know
actual
why,
risk?
Paul.
There's a warmth to him and a love to him, but there's something stately as well, and that there's a bit of a remove. And so, yeah, that balance, the balance between responsibility and expectations, but also being able to see him as an individual and understanding that I do accept you for whatever it is that you are and what you're going to be. You know, it's not just about what I require of you or what's expected of you. These are like the positive qualities of my father who I love very much. But yeah, I just kind of focused on more of that. You know, the idea of somebody who also is aware of the sacrifice that's going to be made and still moving into it out of some sense of hope. You know, I mean, pretty quickly on, I think he can tell shit's gonna go down and it's probably not gonna fall in my favor, but there's nothing to do but move towards it.
Here on Caladan, we've ruled by air power and sea power. On Arrakis, we need to cultivate desert power.
He's one of the few human characters, you know? He's not superhuman, he's not, you know, and there's forces that are way beyond his control that are squeezing him into this particular fate. And so within that fate, to want to at least pass on to his son a sense of humanity and integrity and some form of dignity. And the biggest thing being, yes, we are going in as colonizers, but it's the people that are the key, the people that are there. You know, nobody's realizing what desert power is, which is the people.
Your grandfather said, a great man doesn't seek to lead. He's called to it. And he answers. And if your answer is no, you'll still be the only thing I ever needed you to be. My son.
We pretty quickly got very close. You know, this is the kind of scene partner is. It's like an old adage that, you know, when someone plays a king, they don't play the king. It's the court that plays the king, right? They're the ones that let you know who the person of status is. And, you know, to me as a young, passionate actor, has this incredible role to kind of give that authority over. It takes a lot of security in oneself, and it's just really smart as an actor, you know, because it's going to make the scene stronger. So he did that right away, and I think that's why. And at the same time, doesn't shy away. He's, you know, loose, and we had such a good time doing it. I even remember, like, one of my favorite memories is when we were in the trailer with Timmy and Josh Brolin and Steve Henderson, who's like one of the, you know, was a legend. And Timothy was already preparing for the Dylan movie and just jamming out and playing, and all of us playing guitar and listening to him and already being like, oh wow, this kid's good. Guillermo, you know, and it's a very interesting question because, you know, Denis, in a similar way, kind of infused their being into this material. Guillermo's departs quite a bit from the novel, not in like a, you know, DNA kind of way, but just like the story, the tangents that it goes off, the characters, how they shift. There's a much, I'd say, a more expressive emotional expressive approach that Guillermo takes with this material, whereas in Dune, you know, Denis honors that, like the form of that of the novel in a different way. This is very Mexican, Catholic, Latin American, you know, telenovela point of view of Frankenstein, which, you know, and he said, he's like, at one point, he's like, it's not an accident that my Victor Frankenstein is actually named Oscar Isaac Hernandez, you know, it's because, and we would only speak in Spanish to each other, and it was like a real exercising of our demons, of our pain, and the movie's about pain. That's what it is, about pain and how people deal with pain and the rage that happens, the egos that get constructed out of it, and ultimately the forgiveness of it. So that was an accident. So we had an issue with the steam. The pipes were like not working, and suddenly the steam came out before, and Guillermo was like, let's use it. We're going to use that. And so we made that a feature, you know, that, things should be going wrong. Of course things go wrong. You know, that's the whole point. And so this was like a fun addition that we did. And, you know, I'm particularly proud of making it look like it's really hard to turn those things, you know, because they were so easy to turn. And I was like, yeah, it's one of those silly actor things where I was like, yeah, it looks really difficult to turn. But this whole thing, I remember Guillermo at some point being like, we're making a real gothic superhero with this guy, you know. And those, you know, this was 3 weeks of rain, being dressed in this kind of thing, running up and down, and I couldn't believe how much fun I was having doing this. So this is the other one. I said that about Llewyn Davis, and the other film that feels like life before and life after was Frankenstein. And it had similarly to Llewyn Davis, it's like being in the arms of family. It felt very much like Guillermo was a family member, and there was just a connection and an intimacy together, and it felt like we were building this thing together. We talked about defiance. We talked about the idea of defying our fathers, defying our fate, defying death. So defiance was a big thing, that he's a vitalist, that he is much more artist than scientist, that there is an expressive quality to him, and that he is being pushed along by forces that he's unaware of. That kind of helped open up just the expressive possibilities of who he is. And there's a lot of rage and a lot of anger and pain in this character. And there's a lot of pleasure, and like the idea of like pain and pleasure being just right on a knife's edge with each other. I remember afterwards I went off to do something else, and I found it really difficult, and I realized that like I missed the enjoyment, the sensuality of Victor. Victor's constantly trying to impose his will, even from a place of pain, but to run away from the pain. I mean, to the point where the pain of the death of his mother is so strong that he dedicates his life to beating death, not even from a place of generosity for the world, but from just a place of trying to heal this wound somehow, or run away from the wound. The idea that for me, the creature and Victor are exactly the same thing. Maybe there isn't even a creature, that he goes through all this, his entire journey, even running away into the Arctic, that this inner child of his that he recreates with all the scars and all the innocence and all the brutality that was inflicted on him, that he continues to inflict on his creation, that seems to be just an extension of him, either his success or his failure. And that this child has to chase him down to the ends of the earth to ultimately forgive him. I think that for me was so powerful, and it was like the through line for this character. Thanks so much for watching.